when John sees Jesus, he faints. This is not just, Lefty and I were talking about this on the way down here, how in that series on the Bible, which generally was okay, but when they have the revelation, Jesus just looks like himself, the way they knew him before. When John sees Jesus, and this is more awesome if it is in fact the apostle himself. Some of you know this, I'll just read this real fast. And by the way, it's all in the context of worship. Worship, meaning the community even gathered in this, and so forth. He hears him, he's called. And he says, I turned to see the voice that was speaking to me, and on turning I saw 7 golden lampstands. You know, like even the Jewish menorahs, there used to be 7 branch candlesticks. In the midst of the lampstands, one like the Son of Man, clothed with a long robe with a golden belt around his chest, not around his waist, signifying nobility. Back then in the ancient world, if you were a worker, you tied around your waist. If you were of nobility, you had it like really up here, type of thing. His head and his hair was white as wool, white as snow. His eyes were like flaming fire. His feet were like burnished bronze, refined as in a furnace. His voice was like the sound of crashing tempests and waters. In his right hand he held 7 stars. From his mouth issued a 2-edged sharp sword, I can talk. And his face was like the sun shining in full strength. And when I saw him, I fell at his feet as though dead. This is the Jesus that comes at every liturgy. So, you know, that's who's here. He's not there, he's here. And the Eucharist makes it concrete to us. Okay. This is not my buddy I can slap on the back. You know, I love that people go, oh, I know it's a sin, but God will forgive me. Well, if you're not asking for forgiveness, what are you talking about? If you don't think what you did was wrong, what's the big deal? You're not repenting. This is who we're going to face someday. This is who we're going to see clearly face to face. This is reality check. This is a reality check. And I'm not saying that because God's a monster. God's not a monster, but we have to have reality. It's kind of like, I remember going to Devil's Canyon in Colorado, and it's a 2,700-foot straight drop. You're very cautious. You don't go skipping around the edge. But with Jesus, we can blow him off, right? Well, when we see the reality, just like when I saw the canyon and looked down, this is something to play with. Message to 7 churches. They were real, it's interesting, 7 again, it doesn't mean it was just to these churches. These were not individual letters sewn together, it's to the 7 churches, but let me tell you about how they did scripture back then. This is how the New Testament came together. Paul, John, James, Peter would send a letter out to a specific church. And then they'd make a copy. All right? And then some other church go, hey, can I have a copy of that? And they make copies. And siga, little by little, they had collections. They had collections. And John obviously knows this, and he intends it to be really circulated, big time, which it would be. Ephesus, major center of Christianity, temple of Artemis. They maintained the traditions in an external sense, but there was no love. They lost love. Jesus says, be careful. Smyrna, church with heavy ethnic Jewish presence. Who was a member of the true Israel? They were very concerned about their ethnic identity. And they were upset when the non-Christian Jews would say, well, you're not really Jewish if you buy into this. So they were worried, well, maybe I shouldn't be here because, you know, if ethnically I'm Jewish, I should be part of that. Pergamum, where Satan has his throne. It was a center where there was major emperor worship, imperial worship, where Satan has his throne. A major center. They were tempted to compromise. Give in. You know, everybody's doing that. Whether it be sexual morality, worshipping other gods if you wanted to do business, you know, this kind of thing. Thyatira, city known for its trade guilds, smelting in copper, bronze, gods, patrons for each of the trades. Jezebel, a woman who obviously had some kind of influence, she somehow claiming prophetic gifts, and Jezebel in the Old Testament was associated with immorality and idols and all kinds of stuff. And obviously, just to let you know, there was temple prostitution, part of the religion. Because, part of it was fertility, and so forth. Sardis, which had been sacked by the Persians, but was very wealthy, but Jesus goes, you guys are well off, but you know what? You've got nothing. Yeah, you got nice buildings, you got money, that's nice. That's nice. You're poor, Jesus says. You're poor. Like the person in the casket. They look nice on the outside. There's nothing in there. There's nothing. See, that's important for us as Christians. Do we just look good, or are we what we say we are? Philadelphia, notorious for earthquakes. Again, the same problem with Jewish membership. They had extremely hostile non-Christian Jewish people attacking them. Again, keep in mind, the church is predominantly ethnically Jewish at the time still. For the first century plus of its existence, most of the people in your Christian churches will be ethnically speaking Jewish. Laodicea, again, very wealthy. And here's the famous one. I wish you were hot or cold, but you're lukewarm. Yeah, it's all right. And it says, because you're neither hot nor cold, I will, and in Greek it says, I'm going to vomit you out of my mouth. You in or out, hot or cold? You married to me or not? If either one. But if you play this in the middle game, that's exerazo. Reality check. Reality check. Reality check. Reality check. You know what's funny? None of these churches exist anymore. Go to Thyatira, go to Ephesus, halasmata, ruins. Nothing. 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 What will be here in 200 years? Maybe even 100. That's always a challenge for all of us. Hear this, we're all in this. We're all in this. We're all in this. Then it goes into three big the worship scroll, where it talks about the vision of God and the Lamb, and it says they're calling for the Lion of God, and one comes, a lamb who looks like he's sacrificed. Talk about conflicting paradoxical imagery. The Lion of God, and it's a lamb who was sacrificed. See, you're not meant to fully picture this. It's the imagery of what it means. How does Jesus conquer when they talk about even him being like a warrior? He conquers by taking death into himself. He conquers by the cross. He conquers by loving. He conquers by healing. That's how he conquers. He's not killing anybody. It talks about God, the Lamb, all these, the 24 elders, very obvious. The tribes of Israel in the beginning and the fulfillment of those tribes in the 12 apostles. And they're all worshiping the Lamb. They're worshiping. They're worshiping Jesus. They're worshiping Jesus and God through Jesus and in Jesus. There's the four creatures. You see, there's cherubim. And cherubim are not like these little baby things you see in the Renaissance pictures. They're pretty awesome and scary looking things. Okay? And the other four creatures that appear around the throne, a lion, an ox, a human being, and a flying eagle, which really reflect the noblest, strongest, wisest, and swiftest in creation. And later some of the fathers of the church would take the means symbolize the four gospels. Okay? Matthew, the lion, the ox being Mark, human being being Luke, and the flying eagle being John himself. Then it says, who can open up the scrolls? There's a scroll with seals on it. Who can open it up? And John says he cried because he felt the tension. Nobody, and finally this lamb who was sacrificed is the one. Axios. And he does. And you open it, so you see 7 seals. And there's this sequence John does where he goes 1, 2, 3, 4, think, little pause, 5, 6, bigger pause, and then 7. And he keeps repeating it. And part of it is, every time you think it's the end, it ain't. Every time you think it may be the end, it ain't. It will be the end at some point, but it ain't. See, Jesus' bigger concern is not figuring out when I'm coming back, you better be living the way I would live when I come back. That's what I want to see. How you're living. Does your church look like my presence on earth is in heaven? When people see you as a community, not just the individuals, because we have good people, yes, but does the systemic structure, makeup of the community, how it functions, look like Jesus? Not whether we have a charter from the state in the archdiocese. Does it look like Jesus? And we're all going to be responsible for that. First, the seals are broken. A rider holding a bow on a white horse comes out conquering to conquer. Okay, the idea of war. Rider on a bright red horse takes peace from the earth. So people would actually have conflict and kill each other. Third seal. Black horse with a rider holding scales. The economic, financial systems of the world trying to control everything. And finally, the fourth seal opens up and death comes riding out. And then God says how they're given authority over a quarter of the earth. And what's going to happen to those who have opposed God. Then after that is the martyrs under the altar, fifth seal. Sixth seal is disasters upon the wicked. The martyrs are the big main people who rule with Jesus. The people who are willing to hold on to the reality even if it meant their life's blood. These are the ones who will rule with Jesus. Okay? The shift from earth to heaven is a back and forth. John starts on earth, moves, he's taken up into the heavens, and there's a back and forth thing that goes on. There's a golden censer that's brought out after that, and then with the seventh seal starts, like I said, you think it's the end? 7 trumpets come out. Summoning, and it's to pay attention, listen. First trumpet, destruction, goes to a third of the world. Second trumpet, to the fourth one, it's like all these horrible things that happen, like the plagues of Egypt, sea creatures, rivers, stars, everything. The water sources are ruined. The environment's ruined. The fifth seal is locusts. And Abaddon, or Apollyon, which they would understand in Greek for those who weren't Jewish in the church. Abaddon was the Hebrew name of like a demon. And the locusts, it was meaning demonic. I actually heard this, that the locusts are the helicopters that are going to come and destroy us, and that's not what it means here. Okay. You're not supposed to picture this. I mean, it talks about having faces, hair like women. It's supposed to make, and like I said, if we did this right, which, I'm going to do this, the long version, I'm going to do this on a weekly Bible study after Pascha in my church. We're going to do this where we read it aloud, and as you hear it, how it impresses you. Because it was meant to be read aloud. Okay? Anyway, with the seventh trumpet, this eating of the scroll, 7 thunders, temple and the 2 witnesses that symbolize the church and those who are killed but resurrected. And then with the 7th trumpet is rejoicing and worship in heaven. Then they jump to this whole thing that starts all over again. It's not sequential, it starts all over again. The lamb that was killed now is and this is happening to the earth, but in the end God's going to take care of it all. God's going to be victorious. The war scroll, as they call it. You have the satanic trinity, the dragon and the 2 beasts with him. And it talks about a woman clothed with the sun, the moon at her feet and 12 stars in her hand. Who is it? It's Banaya, but also, what is she? She's also symbolizing. It's not just Banaya. It is Banaya, but it's something else. It's back and forth. It's the past. Israel is the daughter of God, and the church. And that's very telling because the church is the place where Christ is, like when Banaya was pregnant, alive, moving, kicking. That's what the church is supposed to be. Is Jesus alive, moving, kicking, transforming the way when a woman's pregnant, right? Ladies, the bodies change, things change, hormones change, everything shifts. If Christ is in our life, there's going to be shifts. If there's no change, something's wrong. The woman's not pregnant, right? If our life here in church doesn't look different than the life out there, I always tell people it's the only way you hear in church is what you hear at coffee hour that tells you if Jesus is there. Reality? See, anybody can do this. Okay? My kids not light candles. But, anyway. Okay, she has a child. The dragon wants to eat it. The child is taken up to heaven, and the woman has to run hiding in the desert from the dragon who's trying to kill her. Obvious, right? The church, persecution. Jesus ascends, but the church is still here. Okay? Then, after it talks about the mark of the beast, people take the mark of the beast on the hand, right hand or on the forehead. Okay, that was a symbol in Judaism of being committed to, like they would have phylacteries. The Jews would have, like, they take the Torah, and they have a little leather pouch, and with string, and they put it either around their forearm so that it would be there, or they tie it around their head. You still see this in some Hasidic Jewish situations, and it's a thing of the Torah, meaning engraved on your mind, that at your right hand, the right hand symbolizing what you do with your life, what you grab a hold of or let go of. The mark of the beast is what influences. Okay, it's not literally the number 666. I knew of an old lady who got really worried that when she went to her dentist, who was not a Christian, and he was trying to see how her new false teeth were working, he kept telling her to say 66 over and over again, and she thought, oh my God, I'm saying 666. Well, but you see how when we don't think what this means? It means, do we adhere to, is our life determined and defined by what? What defines, influences our main actions? Is it God? Is it Christ? Is it what it means to be church and Christian? Or is it the economy, politics, hormonal drive? What determines the directions of our life? And the 666, if you take it numerically, is the name of the Emperor Nero. The Emperor Nero. Because they talk about this dragon being basically, they thought he was dead, but he's wounded, like fatally, but he's alive. Remember how I said there was a rumor that Nero really didn't die? But that the idea behind it is that spirit, that reality is there, that these systems that the emperor represents, they're alive, they're wounded. And we believe, when we say Christ is risen from the dead, trampling down death by death, death is fatally wounded, but it's not fully dead yet. See what I'm saying? It's fatally wounded, but it's not fully dead. So Christ has wounded, fatally, mortally wounded, but like a mad animal that will, when it's wounded and hurt, goes crazy, and this dragon will try to take down as many people with him as possible. The church survives. And then what happens is we have suddenly the 7 bowls of incense pop out, which symbolizes God's wrath. The first is poured on those who carry the beast's mark, resulting in painful sores and so forth. The second pouring onto the sea. The environment goes to hell, literally. Right? But we want to make more money. We'll do strip mining. If it ruins people's water sources, who cares? We need this. Poured on rivers, springs, turning it to blood. Poured on the sun, allowing it to burn people. Okay. And then it's poured onto the throne of the beast, the heart of the system, God's wrath, his anger, because his wrath is his passionate love for healing, and when he sees us being destructive, destroying ourselves and others, that same love, right? How many of us have been angry at somebody that we truly love? And our anger actually is reflective of the degree we love the person. It's not hate. And if nobody knows that, nobody's had kids, all right? All right? Okay. The 6th one is poured on the Euphrates, drying it up, allowing for other things to invade from the outside. By the way, Armageddon is not a real place. Mount Megiddo it talks about a mountain, but Armageddon is actually a flat plain. The point is, it's about spiritual warfare, the forces of God and the forces of evil crashing into each other. Again, using imagery. It's not like the Gospels where it's literal, there's a real historical reality to it. It is imagery. The 7th is poured into the air, the atmosphere. And the idea of the space between heaven and earth where influences, powers, spirits live, and so on and so forth. Like when it talks about the ascension of Jesus being he caught up into the air, he fills everything, even though that space. There's nothing that Christ doesn't fill anymore. Okay? So I've got the right thing here. I need page 4. Anyway. You all with me still? I'm wrapping up. Then the rest of it really goes into the victory over, the beast going crazy, the fall of Babylon, the whore and the beast, the idea of just being intimate with all these things, how destructive it really is. Okay? The plagues of Babylon, then the judgment of Babylon. And Babylon can mean like Rome, but it means any place that just God is the center. He's not what matters. And I don't mean just talking religiously, where God's values are not there, including including not only politically and militarily, but even financially. It talks about taking care of the poor. There's 2 things Jesus talks about the most, even more than sexual issues. He does talk about those. Number 1 is how we use our mouth, how we speak about people. The second one is, where's our money go? And we will be asked, like, you hold up your bank account, where'd it go? Where'd it go? Remember the 10 talents? I hid it. I didn't use it for you. I didn't invest it the way you wanted it invested. I was going to keep it the way I thought. God has victory in the end. Babylon is judged. God is victorious. Chapter 19, the beast is defeated. The martyrs rule for, quote, 1,000 years, which is in the spiritual realm, meaning the now. The martyrs are even now. They are really the center. They're the main saints. We have to understand those who were killed for their faith in Jesus are the ones who, even now, before the Paulus even completes everything, they're even with Jesus ruling. Then will be the final judgment. Then will be the new heaven and earth. And again, new, not in the sense of he's going to, I actually read something, a guy said, use up all the material resources because when Jesus comes, he's going to burn it all up anyway. No. He's going to rebirth it. The same stuff, just like the same body that was crucified was the same one that was resurrected 3 days later. If we abuse creation, this is a biblical, not a political thought here. If we abuse creation, we will be called into account for that, because God meant creation to be a means of connection with Him and each other, not just for our self-sustenance. And it's only about me, mine. The New Jerusalem is talked about, the temple measuring, and it's not literally a building. It even talks about this cube, but it's like the doors are open. There's all kinds of, again, to understand the meaning. This is a reality, the kingdom that is open, that God is in the center, that it's made up by the people who were faithful to God through Jesus to the end of their every day type of thing. That even when they talk about streets of gold, it's not so much as, it's streets of gold, but what people value now and think is so great and wonderful that, I can't be fully human unless I have the right shampoo, the right car, the right trips to Europe, the right diplomas, blah, 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 I'm just not full, Those things that we think are so valuable that we can't live without, God's going to say, you're going to be stepping on that stuff.